Hello, my name is Maria. I am a philosopher of science and I am currently working as a doctoral fellow at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Hi, I am Luis, and I am also a philosopher of science, and we are organizing a workshop called Logics in Defective Science. And in this video, we're going to try to talk to you a little bit about this topic of defective science, and then we are going to speak about what kind of event we are organizing, where it is located. It is part of a big event called UNILOG, and finally, we are going to talk about the structure of this workshop, what sessions are there, and so forth. So, Maria, what can you tell us?
Yes, so defective information in the science is actually an umbrella term that tries to group things that include inconsistent, incomplete, partial, vague, conflicting, and even false information in the sciences. And the main topic or the main problem that is addressed from a philosophical perspective is how can we explain the presence and tolerance of this type of information in scientific context. The view is very general, and the main idea is that we usually rely on science to tell us true information, to tell us precise data, and so on and so forth. And so when we identify that the data that is present in science is actually defective, then there is a philosophical problem for us to assess. And we are trying to deal with this problem from a logical perspective, mainly because in the literature of philosophy of science, this has been already approached from epistemology. And the main issue with the approaches that we have already is that they are very well localized. So usually what we find is that one case study is explained by appealing to the defective data being either related to an idealization, an abstraction, a fiction, and so on and so forth. But this only concerns the particular case. And we have general theories of what idealizations, abstractions, fictions, and simplifications are. Nonetheless, these theories do not relate directly to the defects. They often relate to the epistemic role that these defects are playing in particular contexts. What we're trying to do is to shift the attention to the general perspective or the general phenomenon of having defectiveness in the sciences and try to provide the grounds for a very broad logical framework that can incorporate all these particular presentations of the defects in order to shed light on which are the structural elements that actually are salient of each of the defects in different contexts in scientific practice. That said, Luis, what do you think we are going to get from this topic?
Well, I think that this topic is very important because it can have a very important. It can help us better understand how science works in reality, not in our idealized models. Sometimes scientists or philosophers and logicians try to develop a conceptual apparatus of a very idealized model of science that is completely consistent, always a neat science, but uh, we find that the effectiveness in science is everywhere, and it's to some extent at least inevitable. So I think that in a workshop like this, we can gain a lot of. We can try to deepen our understanding of of how science works, and if we do that, still from a logical perspective, from a formal perspective, that is characteristic of the logic and the philosophy of science, we are going to gain a lot of a better understanding of how science works with all of these effects, how they interact with each other, and especially how scientists make it to keep being rational in spite of the defects that science can have. But there is another interesting thing that I think that in future research we can can be developed from these findings, and it is that sometimes defective knowledge can have harmful consequences in society. And there are like several topics where defective science doesn't seem to have any this doesn't seem to mean any problems for society. For example, if if quantum mechanics has some defects, like it's not like anybody cares about it. But when there are defects in topics such as climate science or public health or there is like different opinions or different theories in each of those fields. Well, that could be harmful because we don't know. For example, in the case of a disagreement between scientists, we don't know exactly what to believe. We have to be careful about, for example, the current replication crisis in the social sciences. So we need to have a very good understanding from the from philosophy of how the effective science, what is effective science, how it works, in order to prevent the misuse of science in the social context by some sometimes people who is dishonest or highly biased. So that would be for me the most important, a very important thing to like understand in the context of a workshop like this.
You're absolutely right about how important this topic might be for our philosophical understanding and also our social understanding of science and its policies in the long run, for instance. But and that is the reason why we decided to organize this workshop in an event such as UNILOG, because we think we need not only the help of philosophers of science, but of broader communities interested in science, yes, but also in argumentation, in law, in different types of logical approaches, and so on and so forth. So, Luis, can you please help us to explain which this is and why do you think it was a good idea that a workshop took place in this event?
So our workshop will take place in a very important event of logic, which is Unilog 2022. Unilog is a series of events on universal logic that are taking place at least since 2005. It has been in several countries like Switzerland, China, Portugal, Turkey, France, and now we are doing it in Greece, in the island of Crete, more exactly. And this event was going to take place last year in 2021, but due to the pandemics, well, it had to be like postponed for this year. And now we are doing Unilog, but it will be an in-person event, which we think that is a very it's a very good thing for us because we like more like we think it's more productive to have like in-person meetings where we can talk to each other after the talks and not only just like delivering our talks. And well, this event comprises two parts. The first one is a school where we have several courses on logic. You can see the list of courses if you click here in school. And we also have workshops. One of those workshops is our workshop, Logics in Defective Science. But you can see that there is a list of at least 20 workshops, very interesting about the most diverse topics. And about the courses, they are also by very diverse courses, very diverse topics, and we have 13 of those. So Unilog 2022 can be a very interesting opportunity for us to have contributions by several scholars from many parts of the world and interesting in very different topics. Okay, what do you think?
Uh, I like it. It was short. Do you want to redo it? We can redo it and then we can choose between this version and the next one.
Okay, I'm going to redo it once
Uh-huh.
to choose. Okay, yes, to
Okay.
choose.
And after that, just move to in the end, just move to the workshop website.
Okay, sure.
And so we are going to start from there at the session.
Good.
Okay, bye.
Okay, second test, or the third, actually. Okay, so our workshop, Logics in Defective Science, will take place at a very big event on logic, which is called UNILOG, which is a World Congress World Congress and School on Universal Logic. This is the seventh edition of a series of events that are taking place since 2005 in several countries like, for example, Switzerland, China, Portugal, Brazil, Turkey, and France. And this year is going to take place in in Greece, more exactly in the island of Crete, from April 1st and to April 11th of this year. Now, this Congress was going to take place last year in 2021, but due to the pandemics, unfortunately, we had to postpone it, and you can have it now as an in-person event, which is going to be very important for us because we are going to have the opportunity to talk with the speakers, to have like more engagement and more discussion after the talks, which are sometimes not very vivid for us. And this event, as we said, comprises two parts. One is at the school, which comprises like 13 courses about a very wide diversity of topics. But even more diverse is the section of workshops, which we have 20 of those about very interesting topics. Some of them you would never imagine that could be related to logic, like politics or love. But here is more exactly our workshop. This is logics in defective science.
Yes, we are very happy that our workshop will take place in UNILOG. And let me tell you more about the actual workshop. So some of the topics that we decided that we wanted to address in this meeting were the following. First, the problem of defective science from a logical standpoint. As we mentioned at the beginning of this video, we want to assess the use and tolerance of defective data even from a very broad perspective. We also wanted to talk about the rational reconstructions of non-classical scientific inference. We wanted to discuss proposals for scientific inference from non-classical approaches, the role of logics in scientific explanation when using defective information, applications of non-classical ability to scientific research, studies on the pros and cons of classical versus non-classical approaches to science, logical pluralism and monism approaches to scientific reasoning, and non-classical approaches to epistemic paradoxes, and so many more topics. The workshop is divided in three main sessions, and we have three keynote speakers, which are Michelle Friend, Vivek Battens, and Gerard Schertz. The first session focuses on the effectiveness in data, and it starts with the talk by Michelle Friend, which is a model language for chemical experiments. This is a very, very interesting topic because in the large majority of literature from philosophy of chemistry, very little has been done from the logical perspective. And what Michelle is doing is trying to provide a formal approach to how can we explain the processes, the reasoning processes that scientists carry on when assessing experiments in chemistry. So it's going to be a rich first discussion. We're going to continue with Fabian Pregel's talk about a novel solution to the problem of old evidence, which is going to be crucial for assessing the epistemological roots of using defective information in the sciences. Then we will move to a talk by Joachim Micheus from Kent University on human and machine interaction in the context of defective information. She's going to assess this issue from argumentative logics. This is also going to be a very rich discussion. Finally, we want to have Thomas Jermusek, Mateusz Klonowski, and myself discussing how can we move from philosophical analysis of defects in sciences to building logic of defective data. Then we are going to have two more sessions in a different day. Luis, can you tell us more about these forthcoming sessions, please?
So our second session will be entitled Databases in Defective Knowledge. And it will have as a first lecture Dietrich Bachten's lecture called A Unified Framework for Handling Defective Knowledge, which is kind of a formal approach for trying to understand several types of defective knowledge, not only, for example, inconsistent knowledge, like paraconsistent logicians do, but also uh, defective knowledge of other kinds, like vague, imprecise, etc. Then we have the talk by Zoe McConaughey, which is called Aristotle on Building Scientific Databases, Tools for Presenting Demonstrative Reasoning, which is a more of a historical talk, which tries to track some of this discussion, even from Aristotle. Then we have Peter Berdet talk called Two Completely Different Reasons to Give Up Monotonicity when Modeling Scientific Reasoning. And very interesting talk we are going to discuss the principle of monotonicity with regard to the handling of defective science. Finally, we have Gabriel Ramos Garcia's discussion on epistemic opacity, ignorance, and rationality, which relates all these topics in the analysis of big data, which is a very interesting topic nowadays. And our final session, the third session, is going to be about reasoning defectiveness, which is going to start with Gerard Schultz's talk about called preface paradox through likeliness and reasoning from inconsistent belief sets, which is going to relate a very interesting topic of the preface paradox to our general discussion, in particular with regard to epistemic notions like belief. Then we have Federico Faroldi's talk called Generic Reasoning and a Logical Sketch, which is going to be a talk that relates natural language to defective science. Then we have Vladimir Stepanov talk called The Reference Problem in Defective Science from a Logical Standpoint, which is a talk, a very interesting talk that takes place more in the mathematical realm, discussing the problem of self-reference and how this can be any significance for the understanding of defective science. Finally, we have Rolf Pfister talk called a probabilistic and non-monotonic logic for adoption based on conditionals, which is going to be a talk that is trying to relate more like the logical categories of monotonicity, abduction, and conditionals, in that in from that level trying to understand how to work with effectiveness. And well, we close this session in this day with a general discussion about all these topics that we have discussed in these two last sessions.
Thank you, Luis, for describing these two last sessions for us. And for more bureaucratical things to say, I would like to explain that the first session is going to take place in one day, and the next two sessions are going to take place in a different day. Um, this is going to be able to, you are going to be able to find this information in the website of Unilog, but we are going to leave the link in the description of the video. That said, we are really hoping to see you there to discuss these topics with you. And please, if you are in Crete and if you are joining Unilog, join our meeting. We are going to be very happy to have you there and to hear to your intuitions about the presence and tolerance of effects in different scientific contexts.
Thank you, and we wait you there.
Bye.
Bye.